In its PSA Pathways Tracing Report that it released a week ago, MAF references a scientific paper published in 2007 in an Australasian journal whose authors include MAF employees. Of key relevance to the PSA outbreak in New Zealand is the paper's claims that it is not possible for bacteria to be spread by pollen. This is a claim MAF has repeatedly made in its justification for allowing pollen imports into the country. Until 13 months ago, when MAF first discovered Psa-V in pollen imported from Chile, it had always claimed that there was no international peer-reviewed science which would show that pollen could transport bacteria. So I thought I'd double-check MAF's claims. I turned to a journalist's best friend Google, and it quickly became apparent MAF hadn't done its homework. It seems that the scientific world, outside of MAF that is, has known for the last 30 years at least that pollen can easily spread bacteria. Here's a quote from one of the papers we found.
There is a real danger of host pollen contamination of practically any bacterial pathogen which may have infected the host before or at the time of pollen formation maturation.
A senior scientist at Plant and Food Research told Country 99 TV that MAF's claims about pollen not being able to spread bacteria are not just wrong, but amazingly so. While the scientists didn't want to appear on camera, they described the scientific paper MAF is citing as evidence that bacteria can't be transported by pollen as neither thorough nor correct. And Federated Farmers says MAF's stance on pollen highlights a lack of knowledge within MAF when it comes to emerging diseases.
There seems to be a lack of knowledge when the disease arrives here, but they quite quickly get up to speed, but by that time it's sort of too late. But one is left wondering why they weren't up to speed before it actually arrived in the country.
Dr. Rolleston says MAF obviously didn't look very hard when it wrote its report in 2007.
But why they'd make such a sweeping statement as to say that bacteria couldn't be transmitted on pollen is sort of quite mind-boggling, really. Particularly when they said there's evidence of bacteria, of viruses, and evidence of fungi being transported. One would think that bacteria was a likely conclusion that bacteria would be transported, and just to say there are no reports quite clearly indicated they hadn't looked for any.
We tried to speak to MAF about the science behind their kiwifruit pollen import rules, but they told us they had no comment to make. They gave us this statement here, which said an independent review of their rules is scheduled for early next year, and they will wait for this to come out before carefully considering its recommendations. While there is no conclusive proof that PSA came in via the Chilean-sourced pollen, a bacterial plant pathologist, Dr. John Young, told Country 99 TV there is a lot of circumstantial evidence. He told us no other explanation comes close to explaining how PSA got into the country, especially when the first PSA outbreak was adjacent to the only pollen importer. Benedict Collins, Country 99 TV News.